Max Q Productions presents Calling All Stations, a novel, written and narrated by Gilles Messier. Chapter 2. The Gale. When Father was through with me, I could barely walk, but I dared not shirk my duties and soldiered on through the rest of the day as before. As I worked, wincing with each step, I wondered what offense I had made to God to deserve such misery. But though I dwelt many long hours on these questions, in the end I found no answers. By evening the squall had descended, rain pounding on the windows like a volley of musket balls as I climbed the stairs to Father's bedroom. I stopped before the door and waited as he dressed for his nightly watch, but as he pulled off his nightgown, I gasped in horror. From neck to waist, his broad back was covered in hideous welts, like a rash of red barnacles clinging to his flesh. Father turned his head, and his eyes met mine for a long, silent moment. But these were not the dragon's eyes, full of smoldering fire, but sad. Mournful, almost. "You want to know what's out there in the world?" he said. "Well, you just saw it." I swallowed hard as Father pulled on his jumper, covering the scars once more. "Now what do you want?" "Permission to go to bed, sir," I said in a small voice. Father jerked his head in assent, and as a flash of lightning lit up the room, he pulled on his oilskins and hastened up the stairs. The gale that blew in that night was the worst in living memory. Stones which had stood fast for 100 years shuddered under the onslaught. I sat bolt upright in my bed, certain the next massive swell would sweep the lighthouse away like a sandcastle. But once more exhaustion gained the upper hand, and slowly I sank into my bed as the pounding rain, howling wind, and crashing waves faded to silence. I was jolted awake as a cold dagger thrust into my back. A jet of seawater had broken through the mortar between the stones and was cascading over my head. Coughing and sputtering, I leapt to my feet and scrambled to the stairway, but at that moment another monstrous swell slammed against the wall, dislodging the stones and unleashing a torrent that swept me off my feet. Then the lights went out. I flailed helplessly in the frigid darkness, not knowing which way was up. Lungs burning, I thrashed and clawed like a wild animal, until at last my head breached the surface. I had barely drawn breath when another swell swept across the room and slammed me against the wall. Stunned, I sank back into the water, only to find my feet touch the floor. I stood and pressed myself against the wall, bracing myself against the rising waters as I shuffled along. Finally, my foot touched the base of the staircase. Soaked and frozen to the bone, I staggered up the steps to the lantern house. The arc lamp had gone dark. Father stood braced against the rail, oilskins billowing in the wind as he aimed the eldest lamp into the darkness. Thunder and lightning crashed all around as wave after wave sent a geyser of spray shooting over the rail. "Father, the basement's flooding," I cried over the din. "What?" said Father. "The basement's flooding." I sputtered as another wave crashed over us. "Not now!" Father roared. Out in the darkness I spotted the faint lights of a ship, tossed about on swells tall as mountains. "Damn you, the Bloody Bell Rock!" Father cursed, firing off a burst of dots and dashes. "Go north, you damned frogs! North! What the hell are you doing?" As a blinking light answered from the ship, I struggled to make out the message. KEHAEWELKHAV. I could make no sense of it. The ship continued to drift south, edging towards the shoals. "Starboard, you idiots!" Father roared, tapping out the word in French. "Tribord!" More flashing answered. LANDNE. "Yes, you're bloody near land," said Father. "That's what the damned beacon is for." "Oui," he tapped out. "Tribord." The ship was now dangerously close. In a flash of lightning I could see the crew scurrying frantically about her deck, and the tricolor flag flying from her fantail. Suddenly a strange thought stirred in the back of my mind. Something wasn't right. "Pass me the glasses," I called, pointing to the binoculars hanging from Father's neck. "Not now," he growled. "Go below." I reached for the glasses myself, but Father swatted my hand away. "I said go—" Another flash, and for an instant I saw the ship's colors clear as day, red, white, and blue. But the stripes were horizontal, not vertical. Suddenly, everything fell into place. Welkehaven. Which harbor? Nederland. Netherlands. "It's not French," I cried. "What?" "It's Dutch! It's not French, it's Dutch! For the last time, I said get—" My feet went flying over my head as a colossal wave crashed over the deck. Father was nearly swept overboard, but at the last instant managed to grab hold of the rail. But the eldest lamp went skittering across the deck and disappeared over the edge. I held on for dear life amid the howling darkness, wave after wave crashing over my head. Salt water burned my eyes, and each sledgehammer blow loosened the grip of my frozen fingers on the rail. I could not hold on much longer. An eternity passed before a faint light flickered in the lantern house, and I saw Father's face lit by the glow of a paraffin lamp. Though I could hear nothing over the wind and thunder, I could see his whiskers quivering and his teeth gnashing in a frightful pantomime as he urged me to cross over. Stiff from cold and fear, it took all my will and strength to haul myself up against the rail and brace for the dash across the deck. I hesitated, knowing that if another wave struck during the crossing, I would be swept away. So I waited until the next swell broke over me, then bolted. Old Neptune must have been smiling that night, for I made the crossing without incident. Once inside the lantern's glass walls, I collapsed to the floor and gasped for breath. "Get up," growled Father, thrusting a lantern into my hands. Down the winding stairs he flew, past strings of dark light bulbs lining the walls. "Hurry up," he barked. "We've got to find out what the hell shorted—" He fell silent as he reached the larder, now flooded waist-high. Another wave struck, sending a surge of water roiling up the hatch in the floor. The dynamo was completely submerged. "Bloody hell, we've had it!" Father cried. He waded across the larder and wrenched open the receiving door, unleashing a blast of salt spray. In the darkness beyond, I could see the motor launch swinging on its davits, slamming against the lighthouse with each swell. "Come on," barked Father, struggling to grab hold of the launch. "Let's get out of here." I stood frozen in the stairwell. I could scarcely believe it. Father was abandoning ship. Father, whom not even grave illness could pry from Bell Rock. "What about the ship?" I cried. "Nothing we can do now," said Father. "Now come on." I shivered as I thought of the poor crew, moments away from certain death in the jaws of the shoals. But Father was right. There was nothing to be done. Even the venerable lighthouse, which had stood defiantly for 100 years, had finally been defeated. Those men were in God's hands now. Unless... "Are you deaf?" said Father. "Get the hell over here and—" But I was already gone. I could hear Father giving chase behind me, but did not slacken my pace. Reaching the second floor, I dove into the wireless room and slammed the door shut, turning the latch just in time. "What the hell are you doing?" Father bellowed, pounding on the door. "Get out of there!" I nearly obeyed him, reaching for the latch for a brief moment before snatching my hand away. The gashes on my back still stung. Father would flay me alive whatever I did, but I could not let those poor men drown. If I died tonight, at least I would be back in God's good graces. I sat down at the bench and threw the Marconi's power switch. Powered by the storage battery at my feet, it instantly hummed to life. Impatiently, I waited for the tubes to warm as Father continued to pound on the door. "Open this door right now, you little shit!" Out the rain-streaked window, I could see the ship's lights rolling and pitching in the darkness. She was nearly on the shoals. A few minutes more, and she would founder. Come on, come on, come on. At last, a low hum came over the headphones, and my hand leapt to the tuning knob. Frantically, I scanned through the oceans of crackling static and snatches of 1,000 Morse messages, jotting down each and scratching them out as I caught words of French, English, and Spanish. Then I heard it. Those telltale trios of dashes and dots coming in loud and clear. I tuned the transmitter and reached for the Morse key. My Dutch was rudimentary at best, but it would have to do. From the fear-addled recesses of my memory, I dredged up a handful of words. Nederlands ship, I tapped. Dit is... I paused. What did the Dutch call Bell Rock? Dit is Bell Rock. Silence. The headphones crackled. Outside, the ship drew ever closer. Then a signal came through. Welke haven? Dundee. Surely they would know that name. Dundee, I typed over and over. Behind me I could hear the wood splintering around the lock as Father threw his body against the door. Still I pressed on, finger wailing upon the key. Suddenly my heart leapt to my throat as I heard the tortured scream of tearing metal. Was I too late? Had they foundered? I turned to the window, but could see little in the gloom. Turn north, I muttered, as I tapped it out in Dutch. About Norden. More squeals in the darkness, more deadly silence over the headphones. Buurt Norden, Buurt Norden. A flash of blinding white light filled the room as lightning struck nearby, and in its glare I beheld a frightening vision. The ship, clear as day, pitching and heaving just outside the window, so close I could nearly reach out and touch the hull. But a split second later, the deafening crack of thunder sent me reeling backwards, and I toppled out of my chair. Scrambling back to the bench, I lunged for the key and continued to signal. Buurt Norden, Buurt Norden. Nothing. Silence. Had her wireless failed, I thought? Had she lost power? There was no way to know. I kept tapping. Buurt Norden, Buurt Norden. Another bolt of lightning. In the flash I saw the cables from my headphones and key hanging loose from the edge of the bench. I wrestled them back into their sockets, and the crackling strings of Morse once more filled my ears. I threw myself upon the key with renewed vigor. Built Nolden, built Nolden, built Nolden. Then a single word crackled through. Erkenned. Acknowledged. Outside I saw the running lights change from green to red as the ship made a hard turn to larboard. Rearing and plunging in the swell, she struggled against the current, limping slowly from the shoal's ragged jaws. She must have been burning every boiler, for I could hear the pounding thrum of her engines over the storm. But at long last she broke free. With another larboard turn, she set course for Dundee and disappeared into the night. As I breathed a sigh of relief, a great weariness suddenly came over me. I lay my head on the bench, and with the warm hum of the wireless in my ears, I drifted off to sleep.